Hey everybody, welcome to Flash Talks at Infosys. I'm Rohit, part of the Infosys Media Entertainment practice, and I'm going to talk to you about the intelligent media supply chain. So in the last few years, telco and media companies are coming together in a big way, and it's no longer two separate universes, but one universe, and they're bringing together a whole supply chain of content, all the way from content creation, all the way to consumption. So I'm going to tell you about what's going on in the supply chain and how different players in the ecosystem are coming together to unify it and make it more intelligent. If you see some of the problems that the industry is facing, there's a lot of content assets to be managed. So when a movie is being produced, there's the concept of digital dailies. So every day a shot happens and these shots have to be brought together into a whole orchestrated theatrical release, right? Then there is also a lot of boundaries merging. So besides the content production side, the distribution is actually merging. So like AT&T acquired Warner Brothers and Warner Media. So the same company that's doing the content creation is also doing the distribution. The third is they need to be fast enough to adapt to the new revenue streams. So Netflix clearly was a benchmark. They've got way ahead of the competition. Now all of Hollywood is actually catching up to be as good or hopefully one day better than Netflix. And let's see if that happens. And lastly, a collaborative innovation where it's not just the content creators, the content distributors, but there are other players like the cloud providers, like the likes of, let's say, Azure Media or AWS, that have actually brought a lot of innovation where the media has moved to the cloud so as to unify some of the processes involved in collaboration to get the whole supply chain together. So these are the key challenges. And if you see how it's organized, this is a typical supply chain that goes from the talent, which is when the actual script is decided for content, all the way to consumption, which is about distributing the content to the consumer's home. So if you see, a lot of this is really about a challenge for automation. Because today there are something like anywhere between 40 to 200 players in the supply chain when content gets created, managed, and distributed. How do you bring them all together and kind of meet the gold standard set by Netflix, which is if a big Hollywood studio took about a year to get a movie out, Netflix can now do that in I think 1/4 the time. So how do you get better than that when there are players that have already set a gold standard? So automation and a lot of the AI type of intelligent supply chain is the key to that. So if you really see, this is how it is. So I talked to you about 200 different players in the supply chain. They're all spread out like this. So it starts with the concept, it starts with trial, pre-production, production, all the way to distribution. And then every one of them is actually today a vendor lock-in. So there's really strong vendors that have locked in every part of it. So you take it like subtitling, or you take distribution, or you take localization, take metadata. They're all locked into small players who actually take a lot of time to bring their own siloed process into the bigger process of the studio creator to the distributor. So this is the key challenge for us. And the approach that we have thought about playing here is an intelligent media platform that actually is a cloud-based platform that cuts across the whole supply chain, where what it does is it takes all of these siloed processes, moves them up to the cloud, brings the process to the content rather than the other way around. Earlier, what was happening was the content had to leave the studio, go to these silos, get locked up there, and then come back. So that's why you would have an extremely long cycle time, unpredictability, and very high cost, and not really a good segue from creation to distribution. But now, what we've done is unified that from an automation standpoint, a cloud standpoint. We've got 4 pillars in the whole approach. One pillar is about the supply chain orchestration, which is how do you bring automation to make the entire supply chain efficient. Second is about media insights. So starting from first-party data to third-party data to clickstream data to social data, how do you track all those data elements and bring a true unified data model by which the right kind of content is delivered to the right audience and monetized in the best way, which is the third pillar, monetization, which is today advertising and data are two separate supply chains. What if you brought them together such that all of the ads that are being served for content is based on the audience-based approach? So you already know the intelligence about your audience and you serve the right ads. The last part is the how it all comes together into a consumer's home, the experience factory or the studio. So how do you have a consistent experience that's the same in your home theater, where you're watching off your smart TV, to let's say you're watching on your tablet devices or anywhere else across different platforms like Apple TV or Roku or anything else, right? Bring the same consistent experience. And then also a coordination where once the theatrical release happens, how do you bring it into digital platforms almost simultaneously? So that's the challenge with the studio. So we've addressed this in a 3-layered approach: the layer of cloud for the automation, the platforms where all the intelligence is, and the top part is really the content services, which is to keep the whole experience refreshed and competitive because there are so many players playing the whole supply chain. And here are some examples of the kind of metrics. So if you really put the automation in, this is a big studio in Hollywood that's realized a solution like this with us. And they're almost driving 6 million of these content titles every month in terms of global distribution. And when I say 6 million, it's really about all the variants, like language variants and territorial variants, and all of them put together over a vast catalog that's over 10,000 or 20,000 assets in times the number of permutations. That's why it's 6 million. And then we've actually increased the efficiencies by 250% in terms of volume. And then in terms of cost, lowered the cost by 40% because all the silos are now orchestrated well. So it's a great example of this success. This is another example, which is from a kind of, I've actually picked examples from the same big mothership, which is this Warner Media mothership, so that we know how different parts are working. This is the distribution part, where all of the data from first party to third party to social data about content and the audiences is brought together into a single data model that we use for targeting. And the targeting happens exactly like this. It's all brought together, and whichever is the digital platform, we have the intelligence to target it. This is the ad supply chain I talked about. So the whole ad supply chain with the data, it goes to all of these different platforms in a consistent way. So rather than someone actually running a campaign on a platform, they already know which audience is on which platform, and they target that uniquely. The last part of it is the experience factory. So it's about highly automated studio where the entire experience can be automated with the content and the navigation, such that they can actually launch a lot of these new platforms in weeks rather than months and years. And last example to wrap it up is DirecTV Now, which is now called as AT&T TV Now, and HBO Max pretty soon, where all of this experience is brought together. And I think by the end of the year, HBO Max will actually bring out the best of these experiences, contributed by both us from our solution, as well as some of their own innovation internally. So this was really a great opportunity for me to convey the cutting edge of what's happening in the industry. And we hope to be in touch with all of you in terms of synergizing on this progress. And if there are any mutual synergies or collaboration opportunities, we'd love to work with all of you. And thanks again for joining today's Fast Talk.